At the height of the Afghan Civil War, a Russian IL-76 and its crew were captured by the Taliban and taken prisoner. Beginning in August of 1995, the Soviet authorities engaged in negotiations with the Taliban to secure the release of the crew, with the United States also intervening on their behalf. For a full year, the 7-member crew remained in captivity, secretly devising an audacious escape plan unbeknownst to their captors. While performing maintenance on their IL-76 cargo aircraft, the crew covertly readied it for flight. But on August 16, 1996, when the guards left the crew for afternoon prayers, the pilot seized the opportunity to start one of the 4 engines and quickly brought the entire aircraft to life. As they accelerated down the runway, the Taliban attempted to block their path with a fire truck. It was now up to the pilot to push the IL-76 as far as he could and lift the aircraft into the sky. The concept. In 1967, the vast Soviet Union needed a capable aircraft that could serve the most remote and isolated areas of its expansive territory, which were hard to access for most of its existing aircraft. Consequently, the nation sought a heavy cargo transport, capable of carrying loads over 40 tons across 5,000 kilometers at a substantial speed, reaching its destination within 6 hours. The aircraft needed to function as both a military and civilian transport, replacing the Antonov AN-12BP. Simultaneously, the new design called for short takeoff and landing, or STOL, capabilities in all types of weather. These inherent qualities would enable operations from rough and unprepared airstrips, while the airframe had to withstand the harsh weather conditions of Siberia and Arctic regions. And the Ilyushin Design Bureau delivered. Its IL-76 was a multi-purpose, fixed-wing, 4-engine strategic airlifter that met all requirements. To fulfill the STOL criteria, the aircraft was equipped with reverse thrusters and high-lift devices, as well as triple-slotted trailing-edge flaps, near-full-span leading-edge slats, and upper surface spoilers on the wings. Powered by 4 engines capable of 26,455 pounds of thrust each, the aircraft achieved a maximum speed of 528 miles per hour and a ceiling of 50,850 feet. On the other hand, the undercarriage answered the requirement for rough field operations, featuring 20 low-pressure tires arranged in 5 legs. As for crew accommodation, the IL-76 accommodated 7, including the pilot, co-pilot, navigator, flight engineer, communications officer, and 2 cargo handlers. The first prototype flew for the first time in March of 1971, with production commencing at the Tashkent Aviation Production Association plant in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, then part of the Soviet Union. The type entered service 3 years later, marking the beginning of its ultimately triumphant career. Do it all. The IL-76 quickly gained favor, leading to the production of 860 units of the basic transport version alone. Following a civilian conversion model and an unarmed version, designated Candid A by NATO, the subsequent Candid B emerged as a prominent military variant. The redesign could transport 140 soldiers or 125 paratroopers, depending on the task at hand. The airframe featured a twin-barreled rear Stinger tail turret and flare dispensers, coupled with electronic countermeasures mounted in pods along the fuselage fairings. Moreover, the basic airframe underwent numerous modifications and enhancements in terms of its power plant and size, proving more robust than the comparable American C-141 Starlifter. While the Soviet aircraft had a greater operating weight, it had to sacrifice range and internal cargo space compared to its American counterpart. But above all, the versatile aircraft was heavily adapted when it came to its purpose of service. Impressively, the IL-76 would go on to serve in a wide assortment of roles, from civilian and commercial functions to military freighter duties, transporting forces and delivering equipment, weaponry, and supplies. It also became a reliable emergency transport for disaster relief operations during war, disease outbreaks, or natural disasters. The modernization of the series led to the development of notable military variants, including the IL-76 Tu-160 tailplane transporter, the IL-76D Desantinier, and the IL-76LL, or Hypersonic Flying Laboratory. In turn, the IL-76M Modified evolved into the IL-76MD Modified Long Range and IL-76MD Skalpay MT, among others. As for special purpose variants, perhaps the most notable was designed for telemetry and communication relay, missile tracking, electronic intelligence, and numerous currently unknown missions. The unsung hero of cargo logistics eventually became a popular choice among several international air forces. As an iconic Soviet-era design, the IL-76's versatility made it a reliable option for everything from basic transport tasks to specialized aerial firefighting and even zero-G training. In short, the IL-76 could do it all. The indestructible IL-76. The robust and dependable IL-76 boasted a remarkable feature. It could withstand substantial damage and still remain operational. Furthermore, it had the invaluable ability to airlift supplies over long distances from airports with minimal loading equipment. Unsurprisingly, the IL-76 became the primary Soviet strategic transport aircraft. In just 2 years, from 1979 to 1981, the Soviet Air Force conducted 14,700 flights into Afghanistan using the IL-76 alone. Moreover, the aircraft transported 786,200 servicemen and 315,800 tons of cargo, ultimately carrying 89% of the entire Soviet troops and 74% of the airlifted supplies. Remarkably, Afghan rebels were unable to shoot down the high-flying aircraft. Instead, they resorted to attempting to damage it during the most vulnerable parts of its operations, either takeoff or landing. However, IL-76s were often targeted by shoulder-launched Stinger and Strela heat-seeking missiles and large-caliber machine gun fire. Despite this, they would often emerge unscathed, as their sturdy airframes withstood significant damage. Consequently, the aircraft type enjoyed an impressively low attrition rate during this early period of the conflict. Unfortunately, halfway through the 1990s, the fate of a single IL-76 took a terrible turn. Wrong place, wrong time. In 1994, the Taliban movement emerged and swiftly overtook the country by the end of the year. By early 1995, their control over most of the territory south of Kabul forced other Afghan groups to abandon their lands. In August, an IL-76 operated by the Tatarstan-based Airstan airline and leased to a Russian company based in Sharjah, United Arab Emirates, was assigned a critical mission: to deliver 30 tons of weapons from Albania to the beleaguered Afghan government led by President Burhanuddin Rabbani. On August 2nd, a Taliban Air Force MiG-21 intercepted the Russian aircraft and forced the crew to land in Kandahar. After the capture, negotiations between the Russian government and the captors to free the airmen continued for over a year. Even U.S. Senator Hank Brown attempted to mandate between the opposing parties, but his efforts faltered over a prisoner exchange. The captors agreed to release the prisoners on the condition that the Russians freed Afghans in the custody of the Russian government. However, the Russians denied holding any Afghan citizens. Despite the impasse, Brown managed to convince the Taliban to allow the Russian crew to maintain their aircraft. But unbeknownst to the captors, this concession laid the groundwork for the crew's ingenious escape. Safe trip. Over the course of a year, the Russian airmen had been secretly planning their escape. Senator Brown ensured that the crew could visit their aircraft under the pretenses of performing necessary maintenance. However, the resourceful personnel used these visits to prepare the aircraft for flight. During each visit, at least 6 Taliban guards would closely monitor the prisoners and their activities. But on August 16, 1996, their luck took a turn for the better. That afternoon, half the guards left the crew to attend prayers, and the Russians quickly overpowered the remaining guards and seized the opportunity. The pilot then started a single engine, using the auxiliary power unit alone, which was itself initiated with a battery. With one engine running, the other 3 could be started relatively quickly. With all 7 crew members aboard, the IL-76 taxied down the runway as the Taliban attempted to block their path with a fire truck. Nonetheless, the aircraft took to the sky, skillfully evading the obstacle. The Russians then exited terrorist-controlled airspace and headed for the United Arab Emirates. Upon arriving in friendly territory, they were warmly welcomed and greeted with excitement and palpable relief, and even Russian President Boris Yeltsin called the crew to congratulate them on their bravery and wish them a safe journey home. New heights. Though the IL-76 was designed during the Soviet era, it would evolve into an iconic aircraft that underwent numerous upgrades to remain on the front line. As one of the most successful cargo aircraft in Russian history, The IL-76 marked a milestone from the beginning of its operations and found its way into several countries in North Africa and Asia, not to mention several former Soviet republics. Notable military operators include the Russian, Ukrainian, and Indian air forces. More recently, the latest iteration, the IL-76 MD-90A, is powered by the high-bypass PS-90A turbofan engines, which notably meet all international ecological standards of the 21st century. Furthermore, the model offers increased efficiency, enhanced autonomy, and a payload capacity of 60 tons, 20% more than its predecessor. Likewise, the variant boasts a 25% greater range, and in terms of internal improvement, the MD-90A features advanced avionics and multifunction screens, upgraded control and fuel systems, a digital automatic aircraft control system, and a sighting and navigation complex. Not unlike during the Soviet era, the Russian military in the 2020s is aiming for new heights, infusing the latest available technologies into increasingly capable IL-76 aircraft. In fact, in 2021, the country completed the first military cargo aircraft on a new Aviastar SP assembly line, taking a decisive step towards projecting its military power in the coming decades. Thanks for tuning in to Dark Skies. To keep up with more amazing military stories, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the notification bell. And if you're interested in exploring how technology was employed in some of the most brutal battles in history, click on your screen and check out our other Dark Documentaries channels. Stay tuned.